From London, I'm John Weeks, and this is The Standard.
I want to say thank you to the fans by telling you a secret that I've been keeping from you for the last 2 years.
She's done it again. Taylor Swift has broken the internet after making Grammys history, becoming the first artist to win 4 awards for Best Album, and using the platform to announce her upcoming album for 2024.
Which is that my brand new album comes out April 19th. It's called The Tortured Poets Department.
It means the headlines are once again all about the 34-year-old who secured the prize for her record Midnights. However, her album drop announcement wasn't the only drama at this year's awards.
I don't want to embarrass this young lady, but she has more Grammys than everyone and never won Album of the Year. So even by your own metrics, that doesn't work. Think about that. The most Grammys, never won Album of the Year. That doesn't work.
Securing the Dr. Dre Global Impact Award, Jay-Z used his winner's speech to address his wife Beyoncé never winning the album prize at the Grammys. Plus, there was more awards politics, as Billie Eilish, who won Song of the Year for What Was I Made For, written for the Barbie movie, used her speech to praise Oscar-snubbed director Greta Gerwig.
Thank you to Greta Gerwig for making the best movie of the year.
And it was a short-lived celebration for rapper Killer Mike, who was led out of the ceremony in handcuffs, having been arrested for misdemeanor battery shortly after winning 3 Grammy Awards. The other big winner on the night, though, was Miley Cyrus, who won Record of the Year and Best Pop Solo Performance for her hit Flowers. Joining me now to go through the key moments of the ceremony is our celebrity correspondent Lizzie Edmonds. So Lizzie, another drama-filled night at the Grammys this year, and a huge record for Taylor Swift as well. Is she unstoppable?
It would seem so, wouldn't it, this year? She has obviously had quite a year. This is a record-breaking Grammys for her. 4th time she's won Album of the Year, which is one of the main 4 categories, those being Best Album, Best Song, Best Record and Best New Artist. So what a night for her. She also announced her 13th studio album out in April, so what a place to do it. She really seems like she is just living a dream and cannot be stopped, as you say. So every year she seems to produce more and more music, all excellent music, all, critically acclaimed and commercially successful. The Eras tour is just enormous. It's, selling out globally. It became a cinematic experience as well. And she's also in the headlines most weeks for going out with Travis Kelce, who's an NFL player. And so this Sunday, when the Super Bowl takes place, she'll be back at the top of all of the news sites and on the front pages again. So it really does seem like nothing can shadow over her success at the moment, both professional, which is obviously the most important, and personal.
And as you said, she made that announcement about her new album coming in April. Do you reckon she could make it a 5th?
A 5th album of the year? I mean, sure. Why not? Anything is possible. Obviously, it's very hard to say until we've heard that release, but her work that she's released in recent years, from kind of 2020 onwards, has always been, well, earlier than that really, since she released 1989, has been so well received by fans and critics, which sometimes you get artists who are, fan favourites, but critics kind of sneer at, or vice versa. And, it could possibly be a 5th. It could well be, but obviously we'll have to see what her album is like. We'll have to see what comes of the next year and other artists and what they're releasing as well before we kind of say it's a dead certainty.
And another big winner on the night was, of course, Miley Cyrus with Flowers. She picked up her first Grammys. Do you think she's getting the recognition she deserves as an artist?
It seems so, doesn't it? I mean, Miley has had a very roller coaster career in terms of what people have said about her, but this latest album, and in particular Flowers, people really took her seriously, because it wasn't that long ago that she was, twerking in and riding on wrecking balls and causing controversy for arguably, you know, the wrong reasons. And now people are really looking at her as a bona fide artist, which is mad, really, because she's been working since she could, you know, speak pretty much. And she has got a family of musicians. She's from good stock. So I suppose, and she has been quoted as saying in the past that she perhaps, you know, she grew up in the media spotlight, so that, you know, we've seen that time and time again what that can do to people. And obviously at certain ages in your life you want to push boundaries and you want to do things and you want to kind of cause upset, so that might be reflective in some of her kind of more controversial moments. But it's great, and I couldn't believe it when I kind of looked on today and started covering the Grammys that she'd not won one before. It was one of those things. So good on her for winning 2 on one night and it being a first.
And moving on to the sort of drama of the night, Jay-Z made his feelings known about his wife Beyoncé never winning the Best Album award. Do you think he's got a fair argument there?
So Beyoncé has been nominated for Best Album 6 times, as has Jay-Z. Neither of them have ever won it. I believe Jay-Z has about 28 Grammys to his name and Beyoncé has the most of anyone ever at 32. So they are not short of a Grammy or 2 in that household, but this one seems to elude them both, and it is one of the major ones and probably arguably the most prestigious. He has a fair point in that she is one of the biggest artists in the world, and she has been producing critically acclaimed and commercially successful music for decades. However, it is subjective who wins those awards, and, you know, people will have decided that they were better. That was not the right album to win that year for whatever reason. He does make that point in his acceptance speech. He does say music is subjective, but he kind of implored or called on the Grammy Awards and the voting body to think about why she had never won it. Admirable to stand up there and defend your wife and her honour. And I understand why he did it. Other kind of people, such as Kanye West, have come to Beyonce's defence in the past about her missing out on certain awards. So it seems like he's not alone in his thoughts about her being snubbed, but we'll have to see. Maybe her time will come in the future.
Let's take a break now. Coming up in part 2.
It will be in the next year and the next year and the next year to see, you know, if maybe next year suddenly it's all men again.
And there was some more who did, who didn't win award sort of politics with Billie Eilish, wasn't there? She gave a shout out to Greta Gerwig after she missed out on an Oscar for directing the Barbie movie. What did you make of that?
I mean, look, this whole year has been a lot about women in terms of the kind of in culture. So tonight at the Grammys, basically it was a dead certainty that most of the top 4 awards would be won by women because of the huge number of women nominated, which obviously is because of the huge amount of female talent out there. So that's a huge night for music. And we've had, you know, as we've talked about before, Taylor's Eras tour, Beyonce's tour, but also both of them being made into cinematic events going into cinemas. That's a huge moment that there's 2 huge international stars kind of their tours are being made into cinema as well. And then we've of course got Barbie. It's one of the biggest grossing movies of all time, definitely the biggest of last year. Made billions and billions. And it was obviously about women and female empowerment. So yeah, I can see why people are annoyed about Greta not being nominated for Best Director, and also Margot Robbie, the leading lady, not being nominated for Best Actress. But I think it was good of Billie Eilish to credit Gerwig, because obviously that song, What Was I Made For, has been a huge hit for her and been very critically well received. So it's kind of right for her to acknowledge that, and that it came from that movie. And I think by doing that, she's also acknowledging the fact that it maybe have been a great night for women in the music industry, but obviously there's still these kind of things that happen along the way that mean, like the snubs at the Oscars, that mean that we as women have to keep fighting, and women artists have to keep fighting for equality.
And as you say, the Grammys was actually a female-dominated awards ceremony. And Dua Lipa talked a bit about sort of wanting an equal space for women in the industry. Do you think the awards might reflect a bit of a change in the industry?
I think that's the hope. I really do think that's the hope. It's quite an interesting time in the music industry because only a week ago, the UK government Women and Equalities Committee released a major report into the music industry and found that misogyny and discrimination is endemic in our music industry. And obviously it's quite hard nowadays to separate the British music industry and the American, the music industry as a whole is what it was looking at. So there is still, and that, was quite enlightening in many ways to see the real, for people who aren't in the industry, to see the real kind of circumstance in the real situation. So I think things like the Grammys having such a strong female nominees and winners list is fantastic, but it will be in the next year and the next year and the next year to see, if maybe next year suddenly it's all men again, then it kind of feels pointless. There's no point every so often being like, look how many women we're celebrating and look how many women there are, and then it not continuing. It needs to be a kind of sustained effort to, as Dua says, create equal space and create equal celebrations of both men and all artists. All artists should be celebrated equally, and not just because they are women and not just because they are men.
When it comes to the voting process behind the Grammys, it's been heavily criticised in the past for various reasons. Do you think the Grammys is sort of regaining a bit of that credibility since that criticism?
I think it goes a little bit back to, again, this kind of like subjective element of any awards. It is always there. I mean, you are correct. The Grammys has been criticised heavily for its procedures in the past, but it is always going to be subjective. Every year there is always going to be people who think so, and someone should have won and someone shouldn't have won. That's just a fundamental. And so some years credibility will roll into that because, people will think that it's not a credible awards because the winners weren't the people they agreed with. But the Grammys is the musical equivalent of the Oscars and the Emmys. I think it has always been regarded as the biggest night in music, and it's so wide-ranging. There's 90-odd awards from everything. Everything is really celebrated. So I think it can't be swept under the rug as oh God, it's just a load of rubbish. But I do think credibility will come and go. But I think this year has been a particularly good year. We'll have to see whether people thought that the winners were the deserving winners. It feels like at the moment a lot of the winners were the people that were expected to win. Whether or not what critics are going to say the right people to win, well, we'll see.
There's more news, interviews and analysis in the Evening Standard newspaper and at standard.co.uk. Thanks for listening. We're back tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock.